This is an hour's presentation of a visit to India. We went in the beginning of March, just before the lockdown. I'm going to show you, first of all, the pictures of RTU, Reaching the Unreached, in southern India, which was the charity where our parish collected enough money to build a complete hostel, which we opened. So I will show you that. So here we are, journey to southern India. It was a wonderful journey for all of us. I'm going to show you after about Tamil culture and then Christians in India. So this will take us about an hour, I hope. This is India, of course, which you can recognize, I'm sure. Everyone knows India, but this is, sorry, we jumped a bit earlier. We're going to Tamil Nadu, which is the very southernmost part of India. Here, do you see? Here, this is Tamil Nadu in the south. And here you see a map of Tamil Nadu. On the left of it, which is marked, is Kerala. See it on the little map at the top. And we flew to Mumbai here, and then we came into Chennai, down in Tamil Nadu, almost across. And then we flew down to Madurai. This is the district of Madurai, which is a city, in fact, not all of that, but it's the district. And RTU is up in Dingle, just here, up about here, which is where we're going to. And here you see it a bit better on an ordinary map, arriving in Mumbai, Bombay, Chennai, and down to Madurai. Now, Madurai is a fascinating town. Here we are arriving in the airport, and the scripts are in Hindi, which is the official Indian language, but this is Tamil, which is very much the language of the culture of Tamil Nadu. They're very proud of it. Madurai is the oldest city in India, they say, one of the continuously inhabited cities in the world, the city that never sleeps. This magnificent capital of Pandya kings grew around a huge temple built about 500 BC. During the Sangam period, we often refer to this this evening, about 100 BC or right to 300 AD. This was the high time of Tamil culture. Tamil scholars flourished here for more than 100 years. From 300 BC, so that takes us right back before Christ, the Romans and Greeks visited Madurai, calling it the Athens of the East. And trade connections flourished with Europe till about 1000 AD from these ancient kingdoms. And Madurai was visited by these travelers such as Pliny, Roman writer, Ptolemy, 140 AD, Marco Polo, who we've heard of probably, 1200 AD, Italian, and Ibn Battuta, who was a Muslim, I think from Persia, I forget exactly where. So that gives you a little idea of this wonderful city of Madurai, where everything centers on the temple. Now this temple, this bit isn't that old. You see our party, or a lot of our party here. Here is our party. It's missing just one person, who was Paul. He wasn't there. But you probably recognize some parishioners: Agnes, Graham, of course, and his wife Mary, Mim and Mike, and then Lorraine and her daughter Lou. This is a wonderful that was a very happy group where we visited RTU. This is the mode of travel. You could see the TikTok in Lou's photo at the beginning, and this is Denise, Anna Marie, and she's amazed at the mark on the taxi, because that's her trade name for her. She has a little trade out back in Canada, and that's what she calls it. She was amazed to find a TikTok with it on it. That time we spent 24 hours in Madurai, And we chiefly went to the temple, which I'm going to show you a little later, a stunning temple, a wonderful tour of it. We also went to the Gandhi Museum. I'm not going to show you around this, but this is Gandhi because he also was in Tamil Nadu at some stage in his travels when he was all over India, mainly in the north. But his effect is still felt down in the south there. So Reaching the Unreached is the charity, we call it a charity, it's more than that. It's the organization which has grown out of a work of an Englishman, Brother James, who came to India in the 60s, 1960s, and helped, he taught in schools, still a Sal brother, they had schools, and he began to work with orphans on the streets, in the railway stations and so forth, boys, and gathered them in and took them in. They had no keys or anything. And he set up little units, house units of about 10 or 12 of these boys. There'd be anything up to 10, 11, 12. This is where we stayed, and this is our group again. I won't go through it. This was the room in which we had our meals, actually, sitting on these benches. Brother James, you see Brother James here, has been practically canonized. And here, this is the hut he lived in his last days, the room he died in. You see, it's kept as a sort of really. And this meditation hall, and this is the hall, meditation hall. And he's actually buried in this tomb here. He's been brought into this hall because this hall's a modern construction. And every morning they had mass here. Lots of the children would come and the people, but they had big masses at the weekend. Whole place was filled. Everyone sits on the floor, all the children, this is. Lots and lots of children. They sit on the floor. And there, after a mass, the boys, the young boys, would, and sometimes a few of the Indian adults, would come and ask for a blessing. And you spent a lot of time blessing them at the end of mass, which is a great joy. Here we are visiting now various parts of the organization where the children are cared for. This is in an outlying school, not in the central unit of the RTU, but in an outlying area. And here they're having their meal, they're having their lunch, because in all the schools the children are given proper meals because they come from such poor families. This food is cooked in a central kitchen and brought out to these various points. Here in another part of the organization, in a village of houses, because they gather their houses, their families into little villages around with 10 or 12 or 14 houses or whatever. And this housing, they're putting on together a dance. These are the girls doing a dance. And then, this is in another place again. The children are all waving because they're so joyful and happy. And you can see they're having, they're very keen to learn. This is extraordinary. And this is in an outlying school. But here are the boys dancing again in that village, we call it, and they're performing their Indian dance as well. This gives you an idea of the extent of the effort of RTU. This is just the education department, because they not only have orphans, about 1,000 are currently in their dwellings, in their houses, in their homes, with mothers, stepmothers effectively, who've not had their own children or whose own children live with them. Also, they have the school department. And you see these, this is a list of the schools. Balwadi means kindergarten. So these are kindergartens they're running. All those are kindergartens, do you see? They're running in various places. They run primary schools, Peter's Primary School, higher secondary school, and another primary school, another middle school, the LaSalle Study Center. Now, they have 2,000 children in education, 1,000 of whom are living on site. They have 2,000 women also in self-help groups. empowerment groups, perhaps we would call them, in the villages. We'll visit those in a minute. And they have a big medical center where in the course of a year, they have anything up to 30,000 medical consultations. So an enormous operation where they're keeping track of it. Very well run, very well organized. They have a central kitchen, which does 1,000 meals, midday meals a day, also breakfast, also an evening meal for those who are on the site. But this is an enormous operation. Here they're preparing the vegetables, the ladies, in the Tamil way. Physiotherapy unit. They have a weaving center where they teach weaving to girls and make all sorts of cloth items, shirts and so forth, clothes. They presented me with a shirt, just like that. And then they have outreach to all the poor villages all around. This is now on the west side of Madurai, if you can remember that first map. It's out on the west, about 40, 50 miles out we are. And these are tiny villages, just clusters of houses, very poor. And the poorest of the poor people are given, they will actually build a house for them. This is what Brother James did. He would build these houses, which can be built for £1,000, European, English pounds. Of course, it's all local materials, bricks and plaster and so forth, and the floor, and then a corrugated roof, and a very simple 1 or 2 rooms inside. One of them in the corner will be the kitchen. They'll sleep on the floor. There'll be outside a latrine, a wash place. This is all in one unit, as I say, costing £1,000. They don't do them for everyone. Everyone who wants one has to own the land, because if they don't own the land, of course, the house doesn't last a moment. So they have strict rules about this, and it's really done very, very carefully. But the poorest people who live in these shacks that are just destroyed by the monsoons so easily are provided for if someone can find for them the means to have these houses built and to secure the land. They've built 9,000 of these houses in these last years, in the time since Brother James. Now that's a lot of houses, but it's given people security in this in the terrible times. And they've also provided bore wells. We'll look at one in a minute. They provided 2,500 bore wells. Again, that's not a simple operation. They have to bring people in to do that. Here, we're in a very, very poor village, which we visited one morning. This is Mary, Graham Hodges' wife, who is herself Tamil, lives in England, of course, now. And she, of course, was invaluable because she could speak their language, the Tamil language, and make contact with them. And these are the women who are involved in this village in empowerment, really, empowering the women to organize, for instance, to pool their what little money they have, put it in the bank, in one bank account, put it together, and thereby create a fund from which they, and only they, can borrow at rates of interest 0 or only very minimal, to do something profitable, to make an investment for themselves. For instance, to buy a cow so they can sell the milk, to buy an iron, for instance, or to set up a tiny little shop in some way. Here, for instance, these people are engaged in the dhobis. They're the washer people, the laundry. And they do this laundry and they lay it out here on the grass. And here, this is how they iron it all. They iron all these clothes beautifully ironed on these simple contraptions which they reel around, and they have a hot iron with coals in it because they've got no power, of course. So this is the way they make their livelihoods. Again, in this same similar very poor village, my niece Anna Marie and a local girl with her little sister. She's obviously been left in charge that day with her sister. And here we visited another tailoring class, sewing class in another village. This was a group of local villagers using some hall or other little place, and they set up and learned their tailoring and other arts and crafts, so they could actually make a livelihood out of it. These girls, they'd be mostly unmarried girls, some might be married, but they would be learning these crafts. Here you see us at the back, and there is Mary Hodge, Tamil speaker, in the front. And here, this is a water project. I had to open it. I was just sent to do so because they wanted a Westerner to do it, because people from the West have provided the funds for this, linking two villages together. And this is a well that had been dug for the people there. And we had to open it. It was a great ceremony with speeches and things and all that. The Indians love that kind of thing. We got little gifts to take away. And it was a lovely ceremony here in the open. Now this is the hostel that was built with what we managed to raise over 3 years, which is a magnificent as you see, this is the first floor, in fact, the sleeping area, and they would sleep 50 boys here normally on the floor, on mats, of course. And each boy has a little shelf, and that's all he has to put his things in. These are the children who've been living in the families up to about 12 or 13, and then they're going into the secondary school, and as teenagers, they live, they're not in those family units, but more in a sort of boarding hostel, they call it, in the hostels. So this is actually on the main RTU site, and this is the hostel that was built, and they wanted it because the boys had not had a hostel on site before. Girls had, but the boys hadn't, and now they've got this hostel. So this was what we opened that day, and this is the roof, which is also a space you can use and have groups and classes or whatever you do on the roof. You know, it is in the open air, of course. This is where the boys do their washing, because they do their own washing, of course, of clothes. Those are the taps. They only need a cold tap because it's actually quite hot water sometimes out of the cold tap. And then they scrub them on this sort of plinth here on this concrete sideboard. And in the Tamil way, they bash the clothes. Of course, it wears them out very quickly and breaks any buttons you have, but that's their Tamil way. This was the welcome entrance, this kolam that they created for us. I think we saw one earlier when we visited one of the houses built, and this is the welcome that evening when we opened the hostel. And here we are opening the hostel, and then proudly standing round the plaque that had been put up. And here you see, that's the plaque, you can read it. Also, Dowie Hostel. It was called the Dowie Hostel because Woolhampton Hospital would have been too much of a mouthful. So it was called the Dowie Hostel. So thank you for all who supported that. And there's Father Anthony, the director of the whole operation, who is a lovely, very quiet and simple, but highly intelligent and organized person. Father Anthony is in fact, a Franciscan friar. He was a child, an orphan, with Brother James in this reaching the unreached. And he then left, he joined the friars, he's studied in various places in India, he studied in Rome, he's a scripture scholar, but he's now running this work here. A lovely, lovely man, Father Anthony. After we opened, of course, there were eats for us. We sat on chairs. They all sat on the floor, of course. And then they did some lovely Indian dancing. These older girls now are doing a lovely dance. The boys did a dance as well. Now here, I've simply copied a picture from the August edition or the September edition of their newsletter, in fact. And this just is a moment to share the relief work that's going on here since COVID-19 has struck last March. Just I'll share you a little bit from one of these reports we've just had, which says, with India now having the second highest number of confirmed corona cases, in fact, I've just looked it up, it's just touched 5 million today. I had done 4 million, got some figures a little bit later. It's now gone up to 5 million. The continuous lockdown restricts the movement of the poorest people for any sort of work. The livelihoods of a large number of families surviving on daily wages, that means they have no contracts, they have to look for work every day, have been shaken up in the rural villages where we, RTU, work. Getting sufficient food for even one full square meal for a family is extremely tough. So with the generous help of donors, we continue our supply of emergency rations to many vulnerable families. In August, we distributed supplies to over 800 families in 16 rural villages in the Dindigul and Thenai districts. They are mostly abandoned elderly people, our self-help group members, widows, those who are HIV positive or chronically ill, and people with disabilities and daily wage laborers. So here's just a picture of the rations being handed out. And here are just some of these are the basic statistics. Tamil Nadu's population is 77 million, sorry. India's population is 1.353 billion. And in India, there are no longer 4, but 5 million cases, more than 70,000 deaths. And in Tamil Nadu, the little state in the south, on the southeast, there are 470,000 cases and 8,000 deaths. You see the extent of the situation it's a dire situation. After the first week, we went in different directions, and I went to see friends I'd made because I went to India 40 years ago, met Brother James then, and I stayed a year in India then, and I went to meet, and I've been since, as you know, I went with Bruno, for instance, it was 10 years ago, and other times I've been. And so we stayed with some people that I knew, which is wonderful. We went to a Christian ashram, and we went to stay with Father Stephen, who's actually another Benedictine monk in his little community. What I want to say is, I think that behind all this, there is an extraordinary culture of Tamil culture. It's a culture that has existed for 2,500 years, and it's still alive. It's not like the Roman and Greek culture that existed at that time as well, at the beginning, which are dead cultures now. I mean, we go and admire their fruits. We see them in museums. We go to Rome or to Athens or wherever. But this culture is alive. And I want to show you how it's alive by showing you some of its temples. Let's just look at a comment on the culture. It's a contemporary living culture arising chiefly out of the Sangam period I mentioned, 100 BC to 300 AD. Tamil is a quite different language from, say, Hindi in the north of India. There are 14 major languages in India spoken now, and Hindi is the language in the north, especially around Delhi and the states up there, and with Delhi being the capital, it tries to impose Hindi on all India so that everyone is meant to learn Hindi as well as their own language. In Tamil Nadu, they refuse. Tamil Nadu is a Dravidian culture. The Dravidians are the southern half of India, the dark Indians, and the northern half, the Aryans, are sort of lighter. So it's a classical Dravidian language. Its ancient literature ranges from lyric poetry to works of ethical philosophy, remarkably different from literature of other Indian languages, like Telugu, just to the north in Andhra Pradesh, or like Maharashtrian, or Hindi, or Urdu, and all those in the north. And it represents the oldest body of secular literature in Southeast Asia. Now, the religion is, of course, Hindu. Population of Tamil Nadu, 77 million, and about 88%, 90%, let's say, are Hindu. But Hinduism itself isn't one religion, it's a collection of Indian religions, which all link up, of course. The Christians account for just 6% in Tamil Nadu, and the Muslims for 5.5% of the population. Jains, another religion which arose in India around the time of the Buddha, perhaps 400 BC. Jains used to be numerous in the south, but aren't very much now. There are Jain temples and things you can see, but empty in Madurai. Atheist, rationalist, and humanist philosophies also, of course, have minorities, but they're just minorities. So 6% are Christian of all sorts. Tamil Nadu has its own music form from which Carnatic music is evolved, and its own dance form. Unfortunately, I never went to a concert of Carnatic music, never went to a dance. I regret that deeply. And the thing that really surprises is this last statistic: 33,000 ancient temples, many of them 800 to 2,000 years old, are found throughout Tamil Nadu. It is an extraordinary place, and these temples are amazing. Now, their culture, I think this is a slide that was made for me by, Graham, very kindly. And here you have the dance music, the religion, the Tamil history, the Tamil literature, the Tamil language, do you see? And these, the oldest classical dance in India, temples, religious beliefs are ingrained with day-to-day living. They really are. It's extraordinary. The Sangam poetry and so forth has a moral code. And then trade from 1500 BC. That's 1,500 years. In biblical terms, that's about the time of Moses. From Moses, way after Abraham, of course, and before David is 1000 BC. So after Moses, or around Moses' time, trade right into our own era. Trade spice, cotton, gold, and gems with Egypt, Greece, and Rome. The Tamil kings, for instance, the Chola dynasty around 1000 AD, conquered India right up to the Ganges in the north, the river Ganges, and Sri Lanka down in the south, took tributes from Southeast Asia and traded with China. You see, it was no mean culture, an enormous power and influence in the whole of the East. I now want to show you a lovely example of how the ancient Tamil culture is alive today. As I said, Tamil classical dance is around 2,000 years old, with many of its movements handed down to the present day. Many of the children at RTU learn these movements, and here is a video of RTU children performing a classical dance in honor of Brother James.
Na உற்றாரை துறந்து உறவினரை மறந்து பெற்றோரை பிரிந்து பெருமையுடன் வாழ்ந்தீர். உற்றாரை துறந்து உறவினரை மறந்து பெற்றோரை பிரிந்து பெருமையுடன் வாழ்ந்தீர்.
And here is this temple complex in Madurai. Look at that for a cathedral, for instance. Extraordinary. And this is built, this is the modern part of it, this is the rebuilt part of it on the site of ancient temples from 1500 to 1700 AD. And these are not spires, they're gateways, 1, 2, north, south, east, west. I'm not quite sure which is the north, south, east, west, but then the 4 points of the compass. And this is the shrine where the God lives within. And unlike a Christian church or Christian cathedral, who has a spire on it, think of the spire of Salisbury, for instance, pointing up to heaven, up to God who is above all, the creator of the whole world, the transcendent God. Here, they're more conscious of a God who is immanent. And the reason is, or it's symbolized by these high gateways which come down in the center to this golden shrine, which is all dark. So the God who dwells within in the heart, they call it the cave of the heart. The Indian mystical tradition is a wonderful spiritual tradition, and it marries up with our own mystics, John of the Cross, Eckhart, Julian of Norwich, and so forth. Amazing how it's comparable, this whole spiritual tradition, to what we have in Christianity. The Meenakshi temple, this is the temple, is the center of the ancient Madurai, mentioned only in the Tamil Sangam literature, and is also in 6th century AD texts. It's dedicated to Meenakshi, the goddess, and her consort Shiva. Shiva is one of the main forms of God, because all these different gods, if you like, are in fact a form or a face or an image of God, the unspeakable God whom we all worship. This temple was built by the Pandya kings, 1200 AD, was resurrected. Today's temple is a result of rebuilding late medieval times, and the kings restored the core and opened the temple in the 16th century again. We've had that. The temple, this is amazing. The temple is a major pilgrimage destination within the Hindu Shaivism tradition, and attracts 15,000 to 40,000 visitors per day. And these aren't tourists. These are pilgrims, worshippers. People come to pray in the temple, 15,000 a day, this temple, 40,000 on a big feast. And during the annual 10-day Meenakshi festival, the temple draws over 1 million pilgrims and visitors. There's nowhere like that in the Christian West, I think. Perhaps Lourdes and perhaps Rome, but nowhere else. And this is just one of 33,000 temples. They're not all this big, of course, but there are many big ones, which I just want to show you 1 or 2. I'm going to show you 4, in fact, temples. This is one of the doorways of the Meenakshi temple. This is, you could say in Catholic terms, this is the holy water stoop. This is where you go and wash and bathe. Sorry, let's go back. You see, that was in one of the corners of the church, of the temple. You can actually from here see 9 of these gateways from that part. And here's another gateway again. They're decorated with stories of the gods. They're sacred. We would call them Bible stories in our terms. There are some of the pilgrims coming. This is one of the internal halls. Very interestingly, this is the representation of God Shiva, and it's the Nataraja Shiva, the dancing Shiva, in his ring of fire. I can always show you a model of that. I have one in my room. Wonderful, wonderful place, this temple. Here it is at night. This is on a visit 10 years ago. Bruno was there with me then. We went at night, and that's the entrance with all the shops they sell, just like in our pilgrimage places, they sell stuff, and a lot of it is kitsch, even, and same here. And then here's another gateway at night, another hall lit up. And then the final one. Take you to another place, Tiruvannamalai temple, up in the north, which I visited with Bruno 10 years ago. And I visited before many, many times. It is a stunning temple. I'll just show you one or two pictures. Well, first of all, to tell you, this Tiruvannamalai temple is dedicated to Shiva again, and is located at the base of Arunachala Hill in the town of Tiruvannamalai. Shiva is revered in the 7th century canonical works. Let's not read that, but just note that the 9th century Shaiva saint and poet Manika Vasaka composed his great book here. The temple complex covers 10 hectares and is one of the largest in India, with 4 gateways, towers, gopurams they call them. Tallest is the eastern tower, 11 stories, 66 meters, 217 feet, making it one of the tallest temple towers in India. The temple has many shrines and halls, 1,000-pillar hall, for instance. Present structure was built in the Chola dynasty, 9th century, up to 1000 AD, and later expansions are attributed to later rulers. The Hindu saint, this is the most important thing, I really want to tell you that. The Hindu saint Sri Ramana Maharishi lived here and died in 1950, with followers coming regularly to see him from all around the world. Sri Ramana Maharishi was actually a wonderful, wonderful person, and I never met him, of course, but I did stay in the ashram they have there, his ashram, and he was a lovely person and very, very open to everything and to all religions, and used to say that if you want to find God, all you have to do is ask yourself, who am I? Constantly follow that question through. Who am I? Who am I? In the end, you come to the realization of the presence, your presence, and the presence of God. That again ties in with some of the things that our mystics, Christian mystics, have said. It's fascinating. So there's the hill, Arunachala. There's the temple with its holy bathing area. And there it is seen from up on the hill, again with the four gates here. 1, 2, 3, and I reckon 4 is back behind us perhaps. And you see the shape of the temple, they're concentric squares. And you're meant to go in one of the outer gates and then walk right round and then all the way round and then go in the next gate. And then you go on and on and on. There are 5 concentric squares and you come to the shrine of God within. It's a sort of form of what we do in meditation, effectively. There's Bruno 10 years ago in Lebanon now as a peacekeeper. And there's the temple. We went up that hill and we're looking down at the temple, the 4 gateways, do you see? And here, the temple elephant. These big temples always have an elephant, which is used in processions and for all sorts of services. You can even get blessings. The elephant will bless you. Of course, you have to give rupees, money, to the keeper. And this is Sri Ramana Maharishi, the Hindu saint who died in 1950. Wonderful, wonderful man. This is his tomb within. They chant the Hindu scriptures there every day. And then that is eating vegetarian food. We all sat on the floor, of course, but this is in the ashram. Here is another temple near Madurai yet again, Sri Ranganam. I'm not going to show you so much about this. It was particularly, let's jump it a bit. It's a Vaishnavite Vishnu temple. Vishnu is another main form of God. And it's important in the 11th century when the holy man Ramanuja came to Sri Ranganam. And he's important because he was the first really to teach devotion to a personal God. Up to then, the Hindu tradition had been dominated by Shankara, who was the great philosopher from 800 AD, who had emphasized the unity, the God is all one within himself, one within all humanity, one with all creation. But Ramanuja was the first to teach prayer to a personal God. In the Tamil literature again, this temple covers a large area, 155 acres, 81 shrines, 29 towers, and so forth. So making it one of the world's largest functioning Hindu temples. And here, just one or two pictures of it. Two of the priests. Notice the priests all go bare-chested. They're Brahmins. They've got the Brahmin thread on, and they wear these white dhotis, these white lungis. That's when they're on duty in the temple. This is another wonderful temple, Tanjavur, not far away, which we did visit this year. This is a different one. It's a lot of it is open. This temple is dedicated to Shiva, one of the largest South Indian temples in Dravidian architecture, built exactly 110 years ago, 2020, 1010. So it's built just 110 years ago. Temple is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Living Chola Temple site. You don't need to see the other things. It's built of granite. The tower above the sanctum is one of the tallest in South India, probably one of the tallest structures in the world at the time of its construction. So the temple there, here you go in. It's much more open than the others. You see you walk around outside. The closed area is much smaller. There we are. That's myself and my niece Anna Marie from Canada. And there is on the wall, they have an explanation of it in English and Tamil, and a plan of it. Ancient script. It's again Tamil. You can just tell if you look at it closely. It's in Tamil, but I can't tell you what script it is or what it means, because that's beyond me, I'm afraid. Here's another lovely picture from the outside. Then finally, this little temple in the village next to where we were staying. And I just show you two pictures because it's such a lovely temple. This is the picture we started our show with, you may remember. And we did go to a puja there, to an evening prayer, you could call it. And we were made so welcome. My niece, Anna Marie, got garlanded. And these are all little lamps in the background that are going to be in the thing later. Balance us, let's just give you something on Christianity in South India. Obviously, India is not a Christian country in the sense that it's a Hindu country. Hindu, India, it's the same word, you see. Christianity is very old in India. It came from the time of Jesus. Look, just after. Thomas the Apostle was in South India, 52 AD. Reputably, he built 7 churches. Now, this is not historically proven in the sense that we've got actual close records, but there's a very strong tradition in in India, in Kerala and in Tamil Nadu. And also there's a strong tradition and belief by the Christians there now. He was martyred and buried at St. Thomas Mount, Chennai. You can visit his tomb in the cathedral in Chennai, the Catholic Cathedral, Chennai, Madras, that is. The East Syrian church Christians came, so not Roman Christians, not Roman Catholics, but Christians from East Syria. Syria is very near where our Lord was born, of course, just north of Palestine. The East Syrian Christians came 200 to 400 AD and grew mostly in the southwest, in Kerala, which is the state next to Tamil Nadu on the western side. Latin, RC, Christianity, grew in the 15th and 16th centuries. For instance, St. Francis Xavier came to India and did great work. Today, Christians in Tamil Nadu are 5 million. That is 6% of the population, we've already seen that. Mostly Latin Rite, RC, or I should perhaps also say mostly Syrian Malabar Rite. The Syrian Catholics are very, very numerous in Kerala. And a lot of them have come to England now. We have many Syrian Christians in England who are Catholic in the sense of belonging in communion with Rome, but not Roman Catholic. They're Syrian Catholic, do you see?
My parish priest actually is from Kerala.
Is he?
Yeah.
There you are, you see. And there are some of the Christians are Orthodox, many forms of Orthodoxy, Greek, very, very many, and also very many Protestant denominations as well. But the most Christians are Latin Rite, Syrian Rite Catholics. So that gives you a picture of the Christian. There are some Christian churches. There's a wonderful pilgrimage place we visited. I haven't got a photo of it here, called Valangani on the coast. It's like Lourdes. They built a basilica there, and I asked how many it could hold. It was so vast. They said 50,000 people. 50,000, and you have to leave your shoes at the door. So finally, last section, Christian ashram, Shantivanam. Shantivanam is where I went in the 1980s to meet and stay with Father Bede Griffiths, a Benedictine monk, who had been in India then, I think, 10 or 15 years, and was the superior, the organizer of this ashram at Shantivanam. Shantivanam means forest of peace. It's in a tree, not a forest, but in a wooded area, and they call it Forest of Peace. This is the chapel, but it's built in Indian style because the sense of this ashram, an ashram is you find many ashrams in India, Hindu ashrams mostly. They're little communities, groups around a leader, some revered teacher. And that's the sense of an ashram. So Bede Griffiths' idea, and the others that founded it with him, was that monasticism, monastic life in India had existed way before the Christians come. It exists in the Indians' form of sadhu and sannyasi, they call it. And they wear this orange ochre colored dress. And you find them all over India. And so the Christians, when they come, must adopt Indian ways and not bring Western ways. His idea was that we should be the Christian sannyasi. And this is a Christian ashram. It's centered on Christ, Mass every morning. And this is the chapel, and there is the roof. In fact, this has been renovated, this chapel, just recently because it was knocked down. The old chapel was knocked down. They call it temple. Because that's what it is. And you see the figure, this is St. Benedict here, believe it or not. This is an angel, I don't know who. And this is just like those big towers with all the saints on them, the Hindu saints that we saw. This is the figure of Christ. And you can tell it's Christ because he's sitting not cross-legged, but one leg is down, which is the king position. All kings and queens in the Hindu representation are represented like that. It's a sort of style to tell you who this is. This is the king, so this is Christ the king, and you can tell by his big halo and his blessing there. And here are the little huts, they're gathered, and monks in those, the sannyasis, but also the guests have one. You get a little hut, it's very simple, a board bed, mosquito net, and a little washing room and toilet behind. Very simple, but quite enough. Very a lovely situation. Meditation hall. I had some more pictures. This is the current superior, Father Dorotek, and there's me talking to him in the sort of coffee area. And then this is Father B. Griffiths. That's what I remember. He looked like that. This is his little hut, which is kept as a shrine, rather like Brother James's at the beginning. And this is a picture taken 10 years ago when I was celebrating the Mass. It was in another chapel, a temporary one, because that one was being built. And we celebrated the Mass. I did it. I celebrated that day. Others did it the other days. And we sit cross-legged and use some some Sanskrit chants, some lovely chants, and put flowers around the offerings of the offertory of the Mass. As the Mass as you know it, except it was done in this way with a few embellishments. And here is, there's just a little group. There's Father Dorotek, the superior. Father Stephen, my friend, comes from another monastery up at Bangalore, now living down there, who we were going to stay with. They came to pick us up, myself and my niece. And here is one of the monks I knew 40 years ago, Christos, servant of God. And we're just posing for a picture. These are the original founders of this ashram. And there is Christ sitting in the Indian pose with the mudra, which is the position of the hand, which tells you it's a sign of peace. And just final days. This is the monastery of Father Stephen Monastery. It's a little building where he and 2 or 3 other monks live. They were away when we were there, one's in the States actually, and they have young men to give lodging to and help training with their vocational training of various sorts. They help the poor people of the area. Father Stephen and my niece Anna Marie, very happy. And then they took us locally to a very poor village. And the women came to show us that this is the water they have to get. They get the water from this pond, their drinking water, and it's like this. That's their drinking water. And they were saying, can you find us people to give us water from people in Europe who could give us the equipment to get water? Well, that cost 7,000 or more pounds, I'm told. And we weren't in the position to just sort of organize that. We did send some money, but not, we sent it to Father Stephen, because you have to be very careful where it goes, of course, and how it gets there. And so we came to the end of our trip. We went right at the end down to the point of India, this tip of India, where the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea meet in the Indian Ocean, the 3 seas, Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean, and the Arabian Sea. And there it is, the tip of India, with the statue of Vivekananda there. I think it's Vivekananda who founded the Ramakrishna order in the 1800s, on the model of a Christian religious order, actually. It's Hindu order, of course. And there are shrines and so forth on that island, and you can go out there, but we didn't that day. We didn't have time. And there's myself and my niece. That is it.